After the disappointment of the Black Cauldron, Disney suddenly got on this huge kick. Not only were they going to turn out better products, but they were going to turn them out fast. The films went from coming out every 5 to 7 to even 10 years to suddenly every year. And the film that sparked the Disney Golden Era? The revolutionary film that starred hit after hit after hit again? The Little Mermaid. Yeah, you all know it, you've all seen it, and now we're gonna talk about it. Is there any point in comparing it to the Hans Christian Andersen story? I mean, we all know she doesn't die in the end. Disney wouldn't do that. In fact, hell, I think they couldn't do that. So, much like Oliver and Company, let's just keep it to the content as is. This is the first film in a long time where the animation was actually looking like Disney animation again. This was the return to the fairy tale, the smooth lines, the nice songs, the beautiful backgrounds, all the stuff that started with Snow White and most people think of when they hear the word Disney. The story is about Ariel, a 16-year-old girl who's obsessed with being on dry land. Her father forbids it, but then she falls in love with a handsome prince. After saving his life, she decides that she absolutely wants to become human so that she can be with him. So she sells her voice to Ursula the Sea Witch and gets herself a pair of legs. The only downside is she can't tell the prince who she is, which means she has to start from scratch in order to win him over. Of course, while the Sea Witch is plotting her way to get control of the underworld, or underwater world. The feedback I get from this movie is fascinating, and not actually from guys, believe it or not, but from women. I find they either love or hate this movie, and all of it centers around the main character, Ariel. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's look at the good stuff. The music, you know it in and out. It's Alan Menken's songs, and man, are they memorable, catchy as hell. They're bouncy, they're fun, they're slow, they're romantic, they're diabolical. He gets the tone just right. The comic relief, they're also fun. There's some fun tidbits with the crab, you have Buddy Hackett as the seagull, there's that crazy-ass chef voiced by Odo. It's pretty good. The animation, top notch. This is the animation people wanted to see from Disney for a while, and man did it blow people away. It still blows me away. Watching it today, looking at these angles, looking at the colors, everything, it just pops. The villain is great. Much like Radigan, she just so enjoys what she's doing. Although it's much more of a revenge fest than it is just to be evil. So maybe her plot has a little bit more motivation. And I like the fact that this was the first Disney film where the couple actually had to build their romance from something. They didn't just meet and suddenly love each other. Well, okay, they meet and they love each other, but at the same time they have to meet and they have to work at it again. It's not like Snow White where they meet and they get married, or Sleeping Beauty where they meet, they sing, and suddenly they're in love. There is some development here, even though it did take, what, 3 days? Well, okay, in the Disneyverse, that was a long time then. But let's get to what most women either love or hate. The Little Mermaid herself, Ariel. Okay, so what's bad about her? Well, she is whiny. Even her nice songs, when you get down to it, is just very pretty whining. She certainly has all the typical 16-year-old cliches, like hating her father, talking about boys, wanting to throw her life away for them. But let's be honest, that's kind of typical for a lot of girls. So maybe that's why some women hate it. I mean, I guess Bella is living out a lot of girls' fantasies too, but it doesn't necessarily make her a good character. But she definitely has a passion and a drive that sets her apart from a lot of the other Disney women. She's a hopeless romantic, but she's also determined. When she wants something, she'll go to whatever lengths it takes to get it. So, for the most part, I thought a lot of the backlash about the character was just sort of nitpicking. But then I watched Lindsay's review and she brought this up.
She doesn't really change. She doesn't learn anything. Ariel wants something, there are obstacles. She gets what she wants, the end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Despite her causing all this trouble, she still gets exactly what she wants. She whines and complains, and in the end, she's rewarded for it. But you could make a very slim argument that once they have her and she's apologizing, that she has acknowledged she made a mistake. And that admittedly she shouldn't have done it.
Daddy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
But the scene is 2 seconds long and, I don't know, she gets her way anyway at the end, so it doesn't really matter. I guess there are some major character flaws with her, so why do I still enjoy her? Well, horrible to say, I actually really like it when she can't talk. Yeah, I know, make whatever women shouldn't speak joke you want, but that's not the reason I like it. I like it because her curiosity comes out in full bloom. She isn't complaining here, she's enjoying. She's in heaven seeing all these new things. She's a wanderer, she's an explorer, she likes discovering things. And nowhere does that come out clearer in just the simple expressions and the great animation here. Even her songs, which are complaining, I guess, actually really do show how she feels about a situation. And is very passionate. So I guess that's what a lot of people really do get behind in this movie. So yeah, deconstructing childhoods aside, how does this film hold up? Well, I guess it has the ethical flaws that a lot of people say are just ethical flaws in Disney films in general. You know, just meeting a person in a day, wanting to marry them, not always dealing with the consequences of your actions. But the stuff that's good is really friggin' good. The music, like I said, outstanding. Some of the best. The animation, stellar. The comic relief, memorable. The villain, awesome. Even the father character, a character that usually gets tossed aside in most Disney movies, is actually pretty well developed here. And our main characters, despite their flaws, still have a lot of things you can like about them. Personally, I still really enjoy it. It has its issues, but the good stuff is just too damn good. And this would only be the first monster hit that would set Disney on a roll. So after The Great Mouse Detective, we all know the release of the Disney films after it, right? Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, and so forth. Wrong. Between Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, there was actually another animated film that everybody seems to gloss over. The Rescuers Down Under. Even today when I bring up The Rescuers Down Under, everybody says, oh, the little girl in the cave with the skull and diamond, right? No, why does everyone always remember the bland, forgettable one? How ironic is that? I'll admit, out of all the Disney films to give a sequel, it's kind of weird that they did The Rescuers, but you know what? They put their damnest into this movie. This is one of the best looking Disney adventures that has ever come out of the studio, and I have no idea why it continues to get the shaft. Alright, so what's the story? We have a little boy in Australia, who of course doesn't have an Australian accent, who comes across a giant golden eagle, the last one alive. He frees it from a trap, but then a poacher, played by George C. Scott, captures him and tries to force him to tell him the location of the bird. This gets attention all the way from across the world and leads to New York, where Bernard and Miss Bianca, voiced again by Bob Newhart and Zsa Zsa Gabor, are requested to go down there and save him. Instead of using Oval, the bird from the last movie, we instead this time get Wilbur. Get it? Oval and Wilbur. It works. But it works even better when you have the comedic genius of John Candy supplying the voice.
May I just say enchanté, senorita, to you? May I?
This is just another great, passionate role that he gets into, and he's wonderful as always. What Miss Bianca doesn't know is that Bernard is trying to propose to her all throughout the movie, and yet he constantly keeps getting distracted by this other mouse who's trying to put the moves on her. You really feel for this guy. All he wants to do is pop the question and some crap keeps happening to interrupt him. It's more of a cock block than the Legend of Zelda cartoon. Okay, so as you can hear, the story is nothing fantastic. It's just sort of your basic everyday adventure with little mice. Kinda like the first one. Except it's done a million bajillion gajillion times better. Like the scene where the boy frees the eagle. He could just free her and then she just takes him back to the nest, right? It'd take a minute to do. But fuck that shit, we get an intense fall off a mountain, flying through the sky, skating on a river, jumping off a waterfall. Holy fuck. Just watch some of this animation. Yeah, this is what you're missing, folks. How come nobody's looking at this? On top of that, it's a good adventure. It's got some great action scenes, the villain is great. Hey, it's George C. Scott. The main characters are likable, the backgrounds are unbelievable, the animation, as I said before, is spectacular. It's fun, it's funny. It's just a great family adventure film. There was even a short before it with Mickey Mouse called The Prince and the Pauper. And you know what? That's also underrated. It's a really good short. Check it out. I'm sure it's on DVD somewhere. So, okay, why is it this movie gets so overlooked? Well, I got two theories. One is that on the first weekend, the film didn't open very strong, so Disney immediately pulled all advertising from it. So, the reason you probably never heard of it is because you weren't allowed to hear of it. Advertising and publicity after that was kept very tight. But I think the other reason it doesn't do so hot is because it doesn't have any of the typical Disney formula. It's not a fairy tale, there's no songs, there's no strong ethics or morals, and it doesn't have any of the extremely cute fuzzy animals that they love to market. I mean, the Rescuers are cute, I guess, but it's no Flounder. But so what? It's not supposed to be any of those things. It's just supposed to be a really good adventure film. And not only is it good, it's incredibly good. Do we look at films like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Terminator 2 as bad simply because they're not as good as something like Citizen Kane? No, they're still celebrated, they're still the top of their class, so how come this one doesn't get any glory? Folks, we gotta turn this around. We have to increase the DVD sales of this movie because you know what? More people deserve to see it. Yeah, it's a family action flick, but it's a phenomenal family action flick. Taking a subject material that really had little going for it and turning it into a friggin' experience. Check it out, folks. You won't regret it. Okay, so a lot of you know that my favorite animated Disney film is Fantasia, of course. But if I had to choose one that told a coherent story from beginning to end, cashing in on the Disney fairy tale aspect, then that would definitely have to be Beauty and the Beast. Why? Because everything is done perfect. The main character is perfect, the villain is perfect, the romance is perfect, the songs are perfect. Even the design of the castle, look at that thing! It's like something out of The Haunting, it's just friggin' incredible. But let's start at the beginning. We get a cleverly narrated backstory through stained glass windows, telling us the tale about how the prince, who had little to no love in his heart, gets turned into a beast by a sorcerer after treating her so cruel. He was given a magic rose that is slowly withering away. If he can learn how to fall in love and be loved in return, he'll go back to human. Thus we enter Belle. She's the oddball of the neighborhood because she's hot as hell, but she doesn't flaunt it. She doesn't hang out with other women fawning over men. She just reads her books and doesn't bother anybody, which of course confuses a very gossipy town. That is, except for Gaston. In any other movie, he'd probably be the hero. But here, he's the good-looking villain who has much more muscle than brains. He thinks that because he's the best-looking man in town and Belle's the best-looking woman in town, naturally they should get married. Isn't that great logic? But when Belle turns him down, he swears to get his bride. While that's going on, Belle's father leaves town and comes across an enchanted castle where the Beast lives. But the Beast says he's trespassing and throws him in the dungeon, where Belle finds him later. She exchanges her life for his, and he lets him go. Though the Beast sees this as an opportunity to finally fall in love, he's not very social. In fact, he's downright, well, beastly.
I thought I told you to come down to dinner!
I'm not hungry.
I'll break down the door!
But through the help of some very well chosen and very well paced events, the two actually do start to fall in love with each other. They both slowly start to let down their defenses and start to see the good in one another. Which of course leads to romance, sadness, action, bloodshed, magic, all that good stuff. People fell in love with this movie. In fact, at the time, it was the only animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. That was unheard of. So why did it hit a chord with so many people? Well, first of all, it goes back to the Disney roots, but follows all the way through. It's a fairy tale, and it knows that, and it totally engulfs itself in it. But as fairy tales go, there's a few twists. This time, the couple actually has to take their time to fall in love with each other. They don't just meet and suddenly they're meant for one another. And the movie is actually very clever at never saying how long they're together. It could be weeks, it could be months. So that way you're allowed to draw your own conclusions. The villain is a much more realistic villain. He doesn't start off just evil and bad, he's actually the town hero. But as he fails to get his way for longer and longer, he turns to more desperate measures, which leads to one of the more obvious but still pretty poignant lines.
He's no monster, Gaston. You are.
And then you got Belle. Belle is one of the best animated characters ever. She looks good, but she doesn't show off. She's kind, though she has her limits. People mock her, though she could really care less. And she's just off doing her own thing, not giving a shit what anybody says. On top of that, she's looking for something a little more specific than most Disney female leads. And that's something greater than herself. Something grand, something spectacular, something that she can barely comprehend. That's actually pretty deep for a kid's film. It's much better than saying I want a prince or feet or whatever. And it also works out because it turns out what she's searching for is in the very last place she would ever look. Now there is an argument that maybe Belle is too perfect. That she's not really that complex because she doesn't have many problems or flaws. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't see that. She's much more of a role model, the kind of person we want to be as opposed to the kind of people we encounter. But I don't know. If it's still a good role model and the character still seems existable, I don't see much of a problem. I don't really see the downside in liking her. It's that belief in the best of humanity. So for me, I really enjoy her. She's kind, smart, and just does her own thing. I should also talk about the Beast too. I love the way this thing is designed. Whenever I heard the story of Beauty and the Beast before this movie came out, this is pretty much what I imagined the Beast looked like. Very big, very werewolf-like, so I thought he was awesome. I guess if I had to pick one problem with the movie, it would be the design of the human version of the Beast. Beast. The animators say that no matter what they put there, the people wouldn't have been happy because, well, they fell in love with the Beast and not this guy. I think that's kinda true, but I don't know. If you put in Eric or Aladdin or something, I don't think anyone would complain. And plus, people fell in love with the Beast because you called him Beast. What's his real name? Did she just keep calling him Beast after he transformed? No, well, it's a nitpick. Do I really have to explain what else is good about this movie? You all know the songs, you all know how great the animation is, you all remember these characters. It's just a flawless film. As I get older and older, it only gets better and better. It's the pure Disney fairy tale done to the absolute best. I'd say go see it, but let's face it, you already have.
Faccio partire la musica.
Les poissons, hi hi hi, ho ho ho, con la scelta per seguire